Do you have any tips for back handspring mental blocks in particular? Because so many athletes
Yeah.
asked about this. This is like the number one skill that everyone has fears and mental blocks with.
Yes, yeah. So I do feel like, and I actually, in my experience, my back handspring took me the longest to master. Like in all my tumbling
Really?
skills, back handspring took for, there were so many tears. And this was even before I blocked on it. This was just when I was learning. I was like, I should have this
Yeah.
already. Like I vividly remember crying in the car with my mom
Yeah.
after practice. Like, when will I do
No.
this? So
Yeah, it's so stressful.
it's stressful, but I want you to, so back handspring, it's like the first introduction to backwards tumbling. It's the first skill that you learn. And just think about just naturally, like if I put a big tub of water that is completely murky, it's black water, like you cannot see it at all. It's like, reach your hand in there. There's something fun for you at the bottom. Like, go ahead, just put your hand in there. You're like, no, like what? I cannot see. Like I don't know what's in there. Like what are you even trying to do to me right now? It's because you
Yeah.
can't see it, right? You're going backwards. Like you cannot see behind you. So you're trusting and you have to have a lot of faith that nothing bad's going to happen. Plus, naturally, your body, like that is not a natural movement for people to do.
No.
Like so, and that's why a lot of athletes, they like more athletes block on backward skills than forward because it requires so much more trust and so
Yeah.
much more faith to be able to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is going into back handsprings. Um, when you've learned higher level skills, like you've learned tucks or layouts, there's a margin for error. There's more of a margin for error because you can make adjustments. With back handsprings, there's such an idea that I have to do this perfectly. Like there's one exact right way for me to do this skill, for me to do
Yeah.
it safely. Otherwise, something bad could happen. Versus
Yeah.
if you've mastered a tuck, it's like, well, I can do a really ugly tuck, and that'll
Yeah.
be my back handspring, right? There's ways around it. So, but yes, with the back handspring, I would say the first thing is stop focusing on that one perfect way to do the back handspring and think about breaking it down into pieces. Okay, what's the first goal? Like the first half of the back handspring, what are you going to think about that's helpful,
Mhm.
that doesn't put pressure on you, and that keeps you in the moment? Okay, because a lot of athletes too, when you ask them, what do you think about when you go to do the skill, it's like, don't fall, don't mess up, like I have to
Mhm.
go do
Yeah.
it, right? It's like they're not
Yeah.
thinking about things that are really helpful. So find a piece of the skill, like something physical you can do with your body, and tell yourself that. Like that is one thing. So focus on that. And the other thing is just let go of that pressure. So stop trying to make it perfect. Stop trying to pay attention to, is my coach going to see me? Like, what,
Mhm.
are my parents watching? It's like, just focus on you. No pressure. Just, give yourself a manageable goal and kind of go from there. So
Yeah. Okay, those are good
is
tips.
that helpful? And
Everyone
that
suffers from that problem. The
yeah.
back
And
handspring.
yeah, it's a biggie. So I think too, I will say with back handsprings, there's a challenge because they think, well, it's just one skill. And so
Yeah.
there's not a ton of progressions. It's like, yeah, but if you do sit jump backs or you do back handsprings into a pit or you do them on it. So my favorite drill when I was a tumbling coach was to put a cheese mat into the pit. So athletes
Mhm.
literally, like it's a soft surface with an incline or, a decline, and they go into, something. So that
Yeah.
was a good way to build up confidence and trust in my athletes. And there's like, I am so safe right now. And
Yeah.
so and there's a lot of like movements you can do around that. But I think too, for the back handspring, when athletes are doing those progressions or those like drills leading up to it, a lot of them, they're like, well, this is wasting time, or this is not helpful. I need to be
Mhm.
working on the back handspring. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but while you're doing those drills, you can be changing your mindset. You can be thinking about like the pieces or what your physical, like what your body's actually doing to perform
Mhm.
that half back handspring. It's not just a sit jump back,
Yeah.
it's a half of a back handspring, right?
Yeah.
That's a progression. So
Yeah.
like master that half, that first half. Like, okay, now I do handstand step downs, or I do like blocks off of the wall. Okay, that's
Yeah.
the second component, right? So here's how I do that, and really like think about what your body's doing. And it's like,
Mhm.
oh, I can do this safely because I've got really strong shoulders, or I can do this safely because I really have strong legs. So I think just the back handspring, people focus again too much on, let me just rep it out and wait until
Yeah.
my body magically does it by itself. There's a lot
Yeah.
more that goes into it to see that progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any particular skills that are the most common with the athletes that you work with?
You mean like for mental blocks?
Yeah, any fears, mental blocks? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just back handspring fears. Outside of just, are you talking like skills or just like fears in
Um,
general?
yeah, I guess skills.
Yeah,
Like which
yeah,
tumbling skills are the most common that you see?
yeah. So, and even I would say this is true for me. Back handspring, as far as developmentally, that was a big challenge. A lot
Yeah.
of athletes that come to me, it's back handspring, it's back handspring mental blocks. Tucks I see, but not quite as much. And then
Hmm.
fulls, like when there's twisting
Oh, okay.
involved,
Yeah.
that's a big one. And I would even say too, like around like handspring tucks, or like we see a lot around of handspring tucks.
Yeah.
It's funny because athletes like they'll be blocking on a round of handspring tuck, but they can do the round off tuck. It's just the back. So it's a lot
Mm,
of back
okay.
handsprings. It's like
Yeah.
those connection skills when a back handspring's involved.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of technical. So I try to stay in the realm of mental coach, and my team does as well. But I was a high level tumbling coach in the gym for a decade. And so
Mhm.
I know how like technically skills need to look. And so
Yeah.
one, I think that's really helpful when I'm working with an athlete for, mental coaching because I do have that background and I can give them cues and things to think about. But I
Hmm.
think for a lot of athletes too, like I think a lot of gyms and a lot of coaches rush skills. And so they miss those technical pieces that make it like it's hard to tell yourself you're safe doing a skill if you really, like if you're barely landing it, it's hard to
Hmm.
actually tell yourself you're safe and believe it because you do have a history of like, well, I have fallen on my face, or
Yeah.
I barely land it because a lot of skill. So coaches, patience, even just athletes, like give yourself permission to learn skills and master them. Just be a little more
Yeah.
patient than normal. Like even when I tumbled, I had my full by myself for months before my coach knew it because I had a really smart tumbling coach.
Yeah.
And they knew the second my coach found out it was going in the routine. And when you
Yeah, I was just
rush,
gonna say, putting it in there like creates that competition anxiety too.
yeah. And just because an athlete can do a tumbling pass like by themselves in the gym at practice does
Mhm.
not mean they are ready for it to go in the routine and do it three
Yeah,
times.
for sure.
So I think coaches too, like, and again, they're a coach's job, like their main responsibility is to make decisions that are best for the team. And so they are looking at, okay, that are number like pieces, right? All the athletes are pieces and they here who, she has this skill, but she could have this
Yeah.
skill. Like here's the routine. Like they're piecing, right? And so sometimes just it takes a coach just an extra, either more experience or just
Hmm.
that awareness to pause and say, is this realistic for this athlete? Like maybe we do need
Yeah.
to change the routine. Maybe we do need to change some pieces around to give these particular athletes more time to develop and really master these skills. So, which is
Yeah.
hard to do when you're competing
Yeah.
against talented teams. So,
I know. And yeah,
yeah,
you just want to bump your team up to the next level. And
yeah,
especially around tryouts and stuff, everyone's
yeah.
trying to get up for the next level or next routine coming. Yeah.
Yeah, well, parents even like that's in
Hmm.
athletes, it's always like whatever, it's like wherever you are is not good enough. And that's a
Yeah.
challenge. Like there's so like you're where you are for a reason. Like take this opportunity and enjoy it,
Hmm.
embrace it, learn from
Yeah.
it, develop. If you're blocking
Hmm.
on a skill and you're on a team where you don't have your tumbling in the routine, take that opportunity to work on those different pieces and those thinking
Yeah.
patterns and all of those challenges that got you into that position, work on
Hmm.
strengthening those so that when you are ready physically to move up, you're mentally prepared as well and you can sustain it. And then you're not held back in the future. So that's something too that I think a little some more attention could go into that.
Yeah. So going back to the skills that are most common to have fears and mental blocks with,
Yeah.
like handsprings or fulls, it seems like once athletes are introduced to a new movement, or it's like a major step, like doing
Yeah.
back handsprings, like the first airborne backwards tumbling skill you're doing, and then a full is the first twisting skill,
Yep.
maybe. So it seems like once there's a big jump, that
Mhm.
triggers the fears and the mental blocks.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think too, like as you progress, it's almost like forgetting, or just because you're having to think more about this new component of the skill doesn't mean you need to overthink those pieces you've already mastered. So I think
Yeah.
that's really important too. It's like continue, like you mastered the back handspring. So there are things you think about, even though they're very simple, like just one word maybe, but there are things you think about or do consistently with that skill that you need to continue to do, right? Like that's your
Yeah.
baseline. So as you
Yeah.
add in the new skills, don't change what's working. Just focus on the new piece. So I
Yeah.
think that's something that happens too. Yeah.
Yeah. So if someone found this helpful or they suffer from mental blocks or anxieties or fears themselves, then how can they work with you or how can you help them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the easiest way to get started is to sign up for a no cost conversation with me. So, I offer free performance check sessions, and that is a 30-minute virtual call. And the whole point of that is really to discuss what are your goals, what do you want, what's your dream, where do you want to be, and then where you are today. And I want to have a conversation and help this athlete see how to kind of close the gap. How do you get from where you are to where you want to be? And getting them to understand what's happening so they can let go of that frustration. That's really helpful. And what are some steps they can go ahead and start taking to move forward? So that's something I offer. It's called a performance check session. You can get signed up for it at mgpcoach.com/performance check session. And we'll put the link below this video. We'll include it somewhere so that they can get access and get signed up for that. Spots are limited, so if they want to get signed up, if this is interesting, absolutely go ahead and get signed up, please. But it's a great conversation. I spend about 20 minutes with the athlete, then do a parent recap at the end for the last 10 minutes. And it's no pressure, no obligation. It's just, I just want to help you, talk to you, give you some things to think about, give you things to consider maybe you haven't before so that they can move forward in their skills. And then if they found it helpful and they want to know more about what the programs look like and what maybe the best next step would be for them, then at the end of the conversation, then we'll talk through those options together.
All right, that's a good option.
Awesome.
And
Well,
I know
thank you.
you also have mental coaching or other courses available too, right? And free trainings.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got tons of resources on my website. So if you go to mgpcoach.com, that is where you can find a lot of different resources. Also, we have a course. So I have a 12-week Mind Over Mental Block course that's available. We are going to be adding in some Q&A, office hour, like more live coach sessions. So to make sure that as you're working through the content and the curriculum and my 6-step Mind Over Mental Block process, as you work through that every week, you have an opportunity to ask your questions in person with a coach, one of my expert mental coaches. So that is an option. And then we're also going to be starting small group classes here in the next little bit. So keep an eye out for information on that. So lots of ways to get support from us. Just get in contact with us however you can. But a good place to start is that mgpcoach.com, our website.